Almost exactly 20 years ago from today, a nuclear explosion occurred in Chernobyl, Russia. A power surge ruptured the uranium fuel rods, while a steam explosion created a huge fireball that flew off the roof of the reactor. The resulting radioactive plume blanketed a nearby city of Pripyat. The cloud moved on to north and west, contaminating the land in neighboring Belarus, and then moved to Eastern Europe over Scandinavia. From the Soviets, utter silence. There was no word from the Kremlin that the worst nuclear accident in the history was underway. Quote, NPR. Also from NPR comes a story from a woman who experienced this tragic accident firsthand. She says the explosion happened at night, but no one knew until later the next day. In the morning, she sent her son to school, went to get a haircut, and started her day as usual. She was preparing lunch when her husband came back with news about fire in the plant, telling her not to turn off the radio. Her and her family watched the explosion from their balcony, not knowing the dangers. They just saw the beauty of the fire and the explosion. They weren't told of the danger until the next day, 2 days after the explosion. Towns destroyed, cities ravaged, crops and farmlands decimated, and from what cause? A disaster. A disaster can cause disarray in a previously stable area for a long period of time, years after the disaster even happens. There are so many examples of this, domestically and in foreign nations, such as Hurricane Katrina in 2004 that is still not fully cleaned up, or even the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, where radioactivity was present for decades as the rate of birth defects and cancer increased dramatically. To prove this, the average percent of people in the world with leukemia is 4%, while in Japan, after these bombings, that number rose to 20%. It is impossible to say with a clear conscience that these people living through these disasters do not need help. Therefore, we negate the resolution. Resolve that the United States federal government should significantly reduce the aid it gives to foreign nations after disasters. By Macmillan's dictionary, a disaster can be defined as an event causing much suffering, distress, or loss, a calamity. And aid can be defined as money or goods given to a country in need, namely after a disaster. The affirmative may tell you that the U.S. is slowly pulling out of economic crisis and has little money to give to other countries after disasters. However, the reality is that giving aid to countries after disasters would in fact benefit the U.S. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the U.S. engages in trade with over 100 countries. The U.S. economy is significantly tied to the economy of other countries with which it trades. We need to help these countries when they get in a disastrous situation in order to keep their economy and ours alive. In addition, providing goods to other countries will help America by creating jobs that were lost during the recession in order to create these goods. In essence, U.S. aid to other countries provides jobs and money to the U.S. because it creates a larger job market and because of our economic ties. If another country does not manage well after a disaster, our countries will also see failures. According to offgridliving.com, the U.S. receives $148.1 billion from Japanese imported goods. This means that if Japan's economy is ever if Japan's economy is ever in trouble, as it currently is after the earthquake there just months ago, the U.S. will be down at least $148 billion. A question we would like to ask the affirmative is, where do your morals lie? Is aiding mankind, whether it's after a war or an uncontrollable natural disaster, ever the wrong choice? Maybe you believe we have internal problems that need to be resolved before we can help other people. Or maybe you think that the U.S. should not continue its job as the world police. However, if no one else is willing to help, we are obligated to do so. America's current gross domestic product, the money America makes internally, is at a high $14.5 trillion. America has the means to be the so-called world police. When no other country has the ability, we need to be the ones to step up and help out for the betterment of the world. We need to aid foreign nations, not simply because we can, but because it's our moral obligation to do so. Just think of this story reported by the BBC. A baby was on her deathbed after the Pakistani floods in 2010. After being sent to a displacement camp, the life of baby Samina did not seem possible. However, with the help of foreign aid, Samina was saved and regained her life. Without the aid given by foreign nations, including the US, many more lives would have been lost due to devastation and lack of resources.